Welcome to Live Out Loud. I am your host, Raelin Saindon, and with me today is, oh my gosh, you guys, one of the most beautiful souls on this planet that I have the pleasure of knowing. And you guys, I have fangirled her for years. I know I've told her that before. It's super uncomfortable for her, but I kind of like making people super uncomfortable. She is my friend. She is my mentor. She is my inspiration. And she is my sister. Her name is Shari Alyse. She is a global speaker, a best-selling author of Love Yourself Happy, which is a fantastic book. You guys have to get it. We'll talk about that. And she is also, why is it leaving my brain? Oh, a self-love coach. Yes, thank you. A self-love coach. Not only that, she, well, we'll get into that later. Say hello to everybody, Shari.
Hello, everybody. Hey, Raelin, thank you so much. You talk about this fangirl thing, and I just want to say that I feel the same way about you since I've gotten to know you. I am so, I don't know if that makes you uncomfortable. I hope it does, because then we'll be even. Yeah. But no, I'm so inspired by the work that you do every day in all ways. So thank you for being on this journey with me.
Yes, it's an honor and it's a thrill. Thank you. So Shari and I wanted to talk to you guys today, and it's going to be the first of probably many, well, not probably, first of many conversations with you guys. But what we really wanted to speak about today is how the events of our world today as we know it, with the backdrop of this global pandemic, this global halting of our lives as we knew it the day before, and shifting us into unknown territory, and then having so much unrest, and how it has highlighted racial injustice in this country. And our role, as Spirit has put on our heart, to join in with that, to join our voices in with that. So we wanted to talk to you guys today. This is going to be a raw and open and honest conversation. We hope that many of you listening will really identify, and you will look at what inherently lives inside of you. For those of us that are white individuals, in America especially, but across the globe as well, but here in America, we have these inherent racial biases that we have been indoctrinated and conditioned into. And when you look at it in terms of that, it makes it a lot easier to acknowledge, I have found, and then to honestly unpack, dismantle, and re-educate, yourself through this process. So that's what we're discussing today, you guys. Shari, share your thoughts.
An easy topic, right?
Right.
Yeah, we're not taking it lightly. We're going in deep.
Yeah.
And I say deep because even as you're speaking, it's just another layer after layer after layer that I personally feel like just in the beginning, like I just opened the suitcase.
Right.
I might have taken out the top shirt,
right,
but there's so much more digging, and so I just want to start this conversation off, and then I don't know if this is to protect me or whatever, but I already know that I'm going to say the wrong things. And the reason why I bring that up is because I think that that's what has stopped me for so long speaking about it and opening myself up to it, because of my own personal emotional challenges, traumas, conditions, perfectionism, all of that, and having to say it right, having to feel right about it, even though always knowing that there was something not quite right in the world, And so this conversation and just all of this in general is a lot for all of us to look at on many layers, on many levels. And
too, you know, a part of our conditioning has created that awkwardness, that uncomfortability around even discussing it, even talking about it. You know, kids, when we're children, we're naturally curious about people around us and the appearance of people and, you know, what they look like or how they're acting or behaving. And we just naturally say what everyone else is thinking, of course, because we don't have that filter. We don't know and understand about politeness and being nice.
right.
And I know for myself, being taught to be nice has really hindered me in so many areas of my life, but it's made it acutely awkward and uncomfortable sometimes to even talk, you know, even just the words around it. What do I say? Do I say that they're Black? Do I say that, you know, they're African American? Do I say that they're a Negro? You know, what is it?
Right.
And I grew up in the early 70s, early to mid 70s, as a youngster anyway. I'm belying my age here.
I'm right there with you. I was,
right?
I was in the early 70s. Actually, I'm older than you, so.
Oh,
I don't know. But anyway.
I think I might be older than you, friend.
Actually, yes, you just turned. Okay.
That's right, I did.
Good, okay. So a few years. I'm just going to throw that out there.
Thanks.
You got it.
I'm really fangirling right now. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. But, you know, I grew up in the terms Negro and mulatto, you know, and other derogatory slurs were very commonly said around me, through my family, and certainly kids at school, you know, of course, they're learning that from their families. And it's been quite an unlearning process and quite a, you know, man, it's just really highlighted a lot for me, but it's also, I think, explained a lot from my childhood, looking back now, and seeing, you know, learning what I've learned to this point, and then looking back on all of that and really seeing clearly just even the evidence of it within my own family. And my family would say that they're good people and they're not racist. In fact, they wouldn't. It's not that they would say it, they have said that.
Right. Well, I think most people have said that, right. Yes. And just you and I have talked about this a lot because we started, you know, the white fragility discussion group on Facebook, and digging into that whole aspect. And for me, you know, and as you know, and I've shared, I always looked at racism too as, you know, on an individual basis. Like, I love people, I see people equally, so I can't be racist. And the thing is that I'm finding in all of this, if everybody is saying that, then how does the racism exist, or how do we acknowledge it? You know, and Ibram Kendi just said recently, or I don't know if it was recently, but I saw it in a video, and he asked these powerful questions, and he said, he goes, oh God, I don't remember how he framed it, but he asked if either we think that Black people are inferior, or white people are superior, or racism exists. Like, it's one of those, and I forgot how he framed it. You know, I'm terrible at this stuff, but it was this big question. If everybody's thinking that there's no racism, then we have to be thinking these other things then, and this is just the way that it is.
Yes.
You know,
and I have found, and I, you know, just, I guess, knowing how the mind works, right? It works at all times to defend our sense of self, our identity, our position in the world, you know, and our grasp of reality, I think. And like you just said, you know, our positioning as an upstanding moral person, or a nice human being. And it will always look to defend that, and that cognitive dissonance there that exists. But when I read in White Fragility, which you guys, we recommend it as an entry point. We don't recommend it. It's not that we're living there on that book, because it's written by sociologist Robin DiAngelo, who herself, she is white, but she has had decades of immersed diversity training and as an advocate for racial justice and an ally. But the definition then of racism is, it removes it. It's not a term of morality, right? It's not a condition of whether or not you're good or you're righteous or you're, kind or what have you, or that hatred lives in your heart, which I'm just going to tell you all, FYI, that's bullshit. Hatred lives in all of our hearts. Mm-hmm. We have human contrasting emotions, so let's get over it. But racism is actually a very, it is an actual concept that functions as expressed ideas, ideals, and actions that keep and maintain the systems of oppression that exist in our country. And when I read that, Shari, I'll tell you, to me, it was a freeing moment. Literally. Because then I could say, I could look at myself in the mirror and I could sit there and go, yeah, damn, racism lives inside of me. I have been racist. I am racist. I have those ideas and ideals that still roll around in my mind. I'm better at not vocalizing them, but mm-hmm. I'll tell you, sometimes that's the automatic thought that pops to the surface.
Yes. I think that moment for me in the book and coming to that understanding, I don't know if I've ever thought about the word freedom, but I could see that though, but it was like, for me, it was just like a blowing open moment.
Yeah.
Like, it was like,
yeah.
Oh.
Yes.
Oh. Like, I don't know another way to explain that. And in that discovery was a settling into my skin and being like, okay, I see that, I acknowledge that, and now I want to do something about it.
Right.
Because I do not want to be complicit in that. And for years, and I'll keep coming back to this, I don't think years ago, if I hadn't done my own inner work, would I be able to sit so comfortably in that. And by comfortable, I don't mean like, woo, I'm a racist, right. But more so like, I acknowledge, I see it, I'm not going to shame myself over it, I'm going to take responsibility for it, yeah. And let's figure this shit out, yeah. Yeah. And is my own
agree.
coming up? Yeah,
I think we can't stress that enough. Like you just said, it's the inner work that we have to do that is required at the simultaneously as you're learning it, or beforehand, or wherever that fits in there. But I absolutely agree with you.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, Raelin, like a memory came up from 4 years ago in my Facebook memories. And I think it was when Alton Sterling.
Oh gosh.
Maybe was killed. And so I had a post there and I don't remember this, but I remember feeling it, and in there apologizing then 4 years ago, talking about this and saying, I'm sorry that we're still going through this, and I support you and I love you, and these words. And I remember feeling it and meaning it and being outraged by it.
Yeah.
And then it was that slowly walk away from it.
Yes.
And
because we can, right?
Right.
Yeah.
That was the biggest one.
Yes.
But I also wasn't ready to take that on, because I was still taking on my own stuff. I was still figuring my own, and there was only so much that I could carry in. And that's why I think like, and one of our mutual friends said, you're ready now. And that's what it is. But again, back to what you just said, we have the privilege to walk away from it. I don't have to look at it every day. You and I get to just look at it when it's on the news.
Yep.
And still have the choice right now to walk away from it and talk about how it doesn't exist.
100%. And what really strikes me about that is that is like one of, if not the top evidence for, and I honestly do not believe people when they deny it, when they refute it, when they push it away. I just wrote a piece in Medium, and it's been rattling around inside of me for a very long time now. And it's the fact that we know this skin that we live in, this white skin that we live in, knows inherently, it's wired into us. It is part of our makeup. And you know, Jane Elliott, and I know you saw this in one of the clips where she was speaking to a group about the blue-eyed, brown-eyed experience, yeah, that she has taught for decades, since the late 60s, since right the day after Martin Luther King was murdered. She was speaking to a room of predominantly white individuals, and she asked them that if they were willing to take the place of their Black brothers and sisters to stand up, and nobody stood up. And she said, she repeated it, she said, "You're not understanding me." And she repeated it again, the request, and no one stood up. And she said, "And that right there is your privilege. And you absolutely know in every fiber of your being what your Black brothers and sisters face every day, what they're going through, what their life is like, and you would not trade it for a second. And therein is the problem."
Yeah.
And everyone, I mean, it was crickets. We know in our body, and you were saying something, when you were talking about Alton Sterling and, you know, sharing of your honest, genuine feelings about all of that, I just caught this glimpse of you and I, of our presence, our white skin, how that is threatening to our Black brothers and sisters who don't know us and don't know, is this a human being who is here for me, or are they against me? Are they going to see me as a threat? And we talk about, and we hear all over, you know, these Karens. Sorry if your name is Karen and you don't behave like this, but all of these Karens and Chads, you know, who go around claiming that they're threatened by the Black individual in front of them. In all honesty, that's a projection of what they're feeling from the Black brothers and sisters, because they don't know if they can trust us.
100%. 100% in that. And I think I might have mentioned this to you, but I've said it before. I said, if I was a Black woman, I don't know if I would trust white people right now.
Amen. Because not historically what white people have done to them.
Right. And
white
if I was
people have always been their aggressor.
And I need to say this because I know that there might be people listening that are thinking that we're guilting and shaming. I know it because I thought it too at one point. But it's so much bigger than that. I think if we can look through our own lens, and so I keep putting it back on myself in the sense that you and I have faced our own traumas. Yeah. And because I've worked on it and healing it, and because I do not see an abuser every day, I don't have to continually think about it.
Yes.
And so I'm able to, and this is the way that I was conditioned to believe, and I don't know if condition is the right word, but I was taught that when, you know, hardships come and challenges come, you power through them and you're not a victim. Like, these are all the things that I took on. Mm-hmm. And so that included, for me, seeing that racism existed, but also thinking at the same time, well, power through it for them. Those were my internal biases and dialogue that was going on inside me. And now that I see so clearly, and I think about it in terms of me, that if I had to face this every single day,
right,
I don't know how I would react. It's hard enough to just deal with something that happened to me years ago, you know? So
Right, that we have time and distance from, right? And like you said, we're not around that individual. Yeah, 100%. But
yeah, and so I understand the mistrust. I understand the, are you here to stay? Someone posed that question at me yesterday, and I immediately, no, not even what happened, but on Facebook, like explaining that they do feel that way. They're angry, they're tired, and are we just here for the moment, for the hashtag BLM, or are we here for the long haul, forever? And I saw the word forever, and I'm not gonna lie, my heart went, because I know how big this is. And I know how easy it is to walk away. Not easy anymore for me, but the privilege of walking away.
Yes.
And so I get it on a deep level. I get where they're at. Yes. And I don't blame them.
I don't either. I really don't either. And like you said, I echo, this isn't about guilting and shaming folks. This really is, though, we have got to look at it through stepping into their shoes as much as we can and seeing what that would feel like and how that would live inside of us. And we've got to take that honest look, and we have to call a thing before we get to the other side.
Right.
I was invited into a wonderful discussion group by our mutual friend, Miss Heidi Day, who we love, right? Mad respect, right?
She's actually the one that posed that question to me yesterday.
Yeah, yeah, I figured. She's good like that. She keeps us honest.
Yep.
And I love that about her. Right?
Yeah.
She's a powerhouse. And in that discussion group, there were several individuals. I will say not mostly, of the individuals that made these comments, they were white men. Mm-hmm. And they all were very, they kept their emotions pretty cool, but you could feel it. I could feel it. You would have felt it too. There's deep rage in there, and they all said, we understand what went on in the past. We're tired of talking about it. We want to move on. Just tell us what we can do now. And for one of the individuals, and God bless him, he listened to me. But my heart went out to him. You know, I was just pleading with him, I think. But I said, listen, and I talked about the trauma that that we both have experienced, and I said, it wasn't until I could honestly talk about that and name it and be specific with all of it, and then confront what had happened, and hold the people in my world accountable for their part of it, that we could get through it and get over that into reconciliation, rebuilding, and reparation. And I said, this is what our brothers and sisters are talking about. There is no getting over it. Mm-hmm. We have got to sit and look at it and own it and acknowledge it. Our part of it as from our ancestry, but also being in this white skin and being conditioned that way. And until we're honest about it, right? And
Absolutely.
he heard me, but you know, he still wanted to get beyond it and get, you know.
Because it's too uncomfortable to sit in it, because there's a lot of responsibility that you have to take with that, and you have to be willing to take that on. It's very easy, again, to try, as you said, to get from A to C without, everyone wants to get to C without going through B. And the one thing I remember Trevor Noah, and I'm going to butcher this quote, but he was basically saying that we need to have an agreed shared history. Like, we have to agree on the history, because we're not gonna be able to get to where we're going if we can't agree on where we've been.
Yes.
And it's like, and that's been the journey for me right now. First of all, is educating myself on where we've been.
Yeah.
Like the literal education of it, because I keep thinking about to my own education, and I keep thinking about, I'm going to keep putting it back in my own terms, because I feel like everybody needs to put it in their own terms first so they understand it. And for me, I've been thinking about, well, why didn't I pay attention in school? Like, or I did pay attention, but I just believed everything that was shared with me and I didn't dig any deeper. And as I've said to you before, I wasn't taught critical thinking. I was just taught to memorize things. And so what I was taught was, you know, what I ended up believing.
Right.
And I also at that time, because of my trauma, there was only, again, so much that I could hold on to. And I barely even remember school. So the things that stand out for me were like, oh, slavery, oh, the civil rights, oh, this, and we're past all of that. I never had to dig any deeper. It was like, well, we got over slavery. And by the way, the slaves were happy. What I did, the things that stand out because I barely got through, you know, functioning at that time. And I bring all that up because now I know there are a lot of people that are like, we need to get past this. We've already gone through slavery, and not realizing, nor did I, how that still affects today. And I want to say this because it's popping in my head right now, but the trigger. So, you know, like when we're triggered by something, it's usually because it's sitting within us. Like we get defensive, right? And none of us want to look at that. It's like, I remember Jennifer Gardner Whitaker, she said to me one time when we were talking, she was like, if I called you a green bush, she was like, you wouldn't get offended by that. You would be like, green bush, I'm a green bush. She was like, but if you were a green bush, you might take that offensively. Like, you know, so it's that very surface thing. And so when I would hear white privilege or white fragility, I would get defensive about that. And if there wasn't some ringing of truth to it. So that is what I had to look at. I was like, why does this bother you so much? And that is where I said, you know what? All these people are talking. And yes, I said, all these people are talking about all the experiences that they're having. And I'm going to keep denying it. That's like my own, like me as a victim. How can I sit here and deny people's experience? And so that's when I started like really digging in and going, well, let me just educate myself. And by educate means open myself. And that's all I think where we're at right now with where the message I'm trying to share is just start to look. Just start to look, you know?
Get curious, right? Question.
Because
And
if you walk away and go, nope, doesn't exist, not then fine. But I know it's, I think I know.
But then don't get pissed when people dismiss your reality and your perspective and your experiences. And that's gone on for you. 100%. You know, there was something that we were talking last night that you shared, and I had heard from another individual that I was talking to earlier in the day yesterday. Do you remember? It was about letting go of the beliefs that we had. How did you say that? Because it was wonderful, if you remember.
I can't even remember this morning, let alone yesterday. No, I think that we were speaking about that so many people are afraid to, the willingness to look at racism and the acknowledgement of it, because in doing so, there's something that we will have to lose. There's some aspect of ourselves that we feel like we're going to have to give up in order for somebody else to have. And that stems, as you know, from our own feelings of lack and not wholeness and worthiness. And if I give away, then I'm not, you know, and so the holding onto. And so what will we lose by giving somebody else what they need or should have, or, you know, this equality? And so that's what I've been thinking a lot about, because why else would people hold on to this? Like, how does this threaten you? To look, how does it threaten you to say, you know what, there is racism? Because I know it's not about hard work. Any of us can work hard. It's got to go deeper than that.
And I love that. What is it for us? And this is such a good question. What is it that lives in us that we feel we're going to have to lose or let go of or release in order to see the reality of the lived experiences of human beings around us, in our communities, in our friendships, in our families, that deal with it every day.
And that's hard for people, and without getting into the mask conversation,
Right.
but even on that kind of level, there is this aspect of I'm going to have to sacrifice or give up in order to be there for or to help somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
And that stems from a similar place, you know, and
do you think it comes from the aspect of them walking around with their own pain and them not having, because, and I really have a hard time, I think, I try to figure out why people are so hesitant with that, because being an empath and a feeler all my life, and you are as well. Well, truth of the matter is every human being is, right? But we're strongly aware of it, and we acknowledge it, and you know, we've allowed that to grow and develop within us. I just don't understand what the belief is that lives within people as to what they would be giving up. In fact, if anything, they would be liberated. Like we said, I was liberated when I found that the real definition of racism has nothing to do with the character of an individual. Mm-hmm. It has everything to do with systems that are external and ideas and ideals that continue to maintain a level of superiority of one group over another. And that was so freeing.
What comes up for me, just the words popped in, is safety and protection. And for so many of us, you know, bursting through that bubble, like right now, a lot of us live in that bubble. Mm-hmm. And anytime you want to expose any of that for anything, it makes you feel unsafe. It, you know, and so I think, and this is just my feeling, when we're used to living in a certain way and with our privilege that might be, which probably is unconscious, you know, any threat to any aspect of our lives, for some that have not done the inner work, it is a threat. And so the easiest thing to do is to fight and be defensive back, or to say it doesn't exist. Any of our trauma responses, right?
Yes.
You know, turning away, denial, repression, any of that stuff. And that's kind of the feeling that I get from this. And I can only speak because that was me. That was why I didn't look any further, you know, and why I would have said I saw it because, you know, I mentioned before, my sister started dating a Black guy when she was 15 and I was 13, and she brought him home and he was in our house all the time. So I saw and experienced the racism towards him. But I had grown up in, you know, with the other ear going about all the things that were the problem, you know, and so I guess what I'm saying is that I wasn't ready to look yet. And I think that most people aren't because of that safety and protection issue.
Yeah, I think you're probably right. I think you're probably right. And I'm not sure what they're.
Because there's hate, because I can see the other side too. I got to tell you that when I watched this documentary the other day called Politics of Hate, and it was about a white supremacist, and I don't know if it's supremacist or supremacist, but he was talking about, and he was pretty high up, and he was talking about.
And he's now out of it, right?
Yes.
Okay.
And talking about just the beliefs that you're taught to believe, you know, about patriotism and fighting for your country, and anything outside of that starts to be a threat. So from his perspective, he is fighting for our country, just like we are fighting for the rights of. Yeah. And so I see it. And after watching that opened up another whole door for me, like that while there are hateful and angry people, they're hateful and angry because their own rights they feel are being threatened or something's being taken away from them.
Yes.
And anybody that is going against that is that threat. And so you're going to fight for your life over it, you know?
It's the propaganda, right? That's out there. And
so that's the hard part though about this, is because how do you break through that
Right.
people's deep-seated beliefs,
Right.
you know, and they'll, and it's like, well, I'm not racist and I'm not hateful, because in their mind and their heart, they're defending
Right.
their own beliefs and heart.
I think too that comes down to, and we've talked about it in our group, and you know, we've heard it from our relationships within you know, the Black community, that it comes from having relationships, and you know, and really the continual, you know, we think of the bombardment from all sides, from all sources of these messages, right? That come in, and our mind is a filter, and it will grab what it knows and understands, and it will accept that. And what it doesn't know and understand, it, again, the mind interprets that as a threat, so it will reject. But as we continue to speak out and speak up and have these conversations and say, well, actually, here's the truth. You know, Black Lives Matter is started as an organization, yes, but what we're talking about now is the movement of Black Lives Matter, which is very different, vastly different from the founding principles of Black Lives Matter, the organization. And you know, and we go into conversation about, well, here's what the true definition of racism is, and the true definition of prejudice and bias and bigotry. You know, people will use all of those interchangeably, and they're vastly separate definitions. And I think with the repetitive, you know, messaging and counter messaging, and then just holding space for that other individual in relationship. In the group, Heidi was talking about, she had an individual, a friend of hers, say something to her, and Heidi was like, come on, you know better than that. And so she had a conversation, and this friend didn't talk to her for a while, and then came back to her and with some questions, and I think also with the book White Fragility, and said, teach me, I'm ready to listen. You know, and at the time when the initial conversation happened, Heidi thought, well, okay, there goes another one down, another one bites the dust, you know?
Yeah.
I had a dear friend and student of mine who it was early on when all of this kicked off with George Floyd, and of course she was upset about it and very vocal about this should not be happening and when is this going to stop. But then with the protests and the individuals from alt-right organizations who were disruptive and destructive, right, and attempting to derail the movement of Black Lives Matter and give them a bad name. And her comment was, well, I agree with peaceful protestation, but when it comes to destruction of property, right? Mm-hmm. So we had that conversation with her, and she brought up from the Revolutionary War, prior to Revolutionary War, the Boston Tea Party. And she said that was peaceful and there was no destruction of property. And I said, oh, time out. No, it wasn't. They burned the ship. They took all of the stuff on the ship, dumped it into the harbor. They were destroying everything. There were fires all over Boston at that time. There was mass upheaval. No, it wasn't peaceful. And so she and a couple of other people commented, and she gave it some time. She said, well, that's my perspective. And I said, that's great. Hold your perspective, but I just want to give you the reality.
Facts.
You can, yeah. Perspective is one thing, but let's deal with facts. And she said to me several days later, she messaged me very upset. And she said, you know, I asked Spirit to reveal the truth to me, and I looked into it and read and just allowed Spirit to speak to my heart. And I want to tell you, I'm really sorry and I'm ready to learn. And I was like, hey, no apologies to me. But that's the work of spirit on your life. And that's what, I think that's the role here too, that we're only responsible for those in front of us that we can speak to, that we can share with and say, hey, this is inappropriate. Time out, you're wrong. Here's, have you thought of it this direction, etc. And then you just got to let it sit and simmer sometimes and steep, for people. And
yeah, it's been challenging.
right?
Like, it's been challenging to find that balance, because when you find your voice in something, you want to shout it to everybody. And so I have been, as you know, trying to find that balance, because I know more people have to will have to listen. And the only way you're going to listen is when you're not feeling that you're being attacked. What keeps coming up for me over and over again, and I feel like if we could all just acknowledge and get on the same page that there's a problem in this country, like no matter whose side it is, right? There's a problem. And if everything we've done up to this point has not worked, maybe we look at it a little bit differently. And so in maybe looking at that a little differently, we have the willingness to maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I am wrong about the way that I think, and maybe this wrongness doesn't make me a bad person. Maybe, I just didn't see it.
Right.
And because I know that we're all trying to just support our own narrative because it keeps us safe. Even as I scroll through social media, I don't want to read articles that go against what I already think. I keep finding the supportive articles that help me in my argument. And that is part of the challenge for all of us.
Right. Right.
So all I keep going back to is there's a problem. Whatever we're doing is not working towards it. So how can we look at this differently?
Einstein has a wonderful quote. He said, the same mind that created the problem cannot be the one that solves it. And so we have to shift our thinking. We have to we have to dial our lens differently. Or put on new glasses and look at it in a new way from a fresh perspective.
And again, it goes back to the inner work, which is, how can you not make this about you? Yesterday in the protest, I told you that, I had a car of 3 black, a woman and two men, and who were railing at me about being out, who were obviously angry at white people, which I understood as we talk about, or angry that I was there and part of this movement, whether it was me holding my fist up or whatever it was, and there was music playing, and maybe to them it was a mockery of it, maybe I didn't understand, whatever the reason was. Right. And while it shook me to my core because I knew why I was there, I also knew that it wasn't about Shari, that I could have been any person with white skin at that moment. And that is, I'll keep saying, the inner work that I've been able to do. While I could still call you and be upset about it, I still knew on a deeper level that it wasn't about me. And I think if we can get to that place where we're not beating ourselves up over it, we're just looking at it for what it is, taking responsibility, acknowledging it, and then taking action, I think we can come, that this might be easier on people, So
let's talk about some of the things, I guess, that we have been called to take action upon, and to seek alignment in, and how we show up and how things have shifted for us in our work, and in the directions that we're heading.
Ooh. Well, I'm still unpacking. I know that I have made a commitment to not stay quiet about this anymore. Right. I have made a commitment to speak out about the wrongdoings, I hate you say calling people out, but I think calling out education.
Yes.
Because that really is the truth for me, is that I can try to interpret anything as I want, but a fact is a fact, and so for me, the biggest shift that I've made so far is just in choosing to educate myself, because that's the most power that we have, you know, is our knowledge. And not, and choosing to listen. I mean, listening is huge, and not be defensive. Like, that's why I took a moment with that post last night that was posed at me. And at me, I know it was to general white people saying, you know, we're hurt, we're angry, we've seen this before. Are you here forever?
Yes.
I had to sit with that, because my own conditioning wants to get defensive and be like, oh, you know.
Yes.
But but the work that I'm doing now and shifting is that it isn't about me.
Yeah. There is a wonderful article on Medium by Catherine, I hope I say her last name right, Pugh, P-U-G-H, and she's an attorney, and she says in the article, the title is something along the lines of, we don't need your white allyship, and solidarity, or something to that effect. And when I saw that, I was like, oh, shoot. But I read it and I leaned in, like you just said, I leaned in hard to it. And I was like, sister, fill my cup. And her messaging was, listen, allyship doesn't even go far enough. What is it that you're willing to sacrifice? What is it that you're willing to commit to and to become and embody in this process for our very lives? Because until you literally have skin in the game, our white skin in the game, right? Anything and everything else is just dancing around the edge of the fire, but not getting into it with them. And I was like,
what are we willing to lose? What are we willing to lose?
What are we willing to lose? And she said it's taking it to the level of, she called it co-conspirator. So it's not even about allyship, but it's co-conspirator.
Remember that great, I think it was a video with the flagpole?
Yeah.
And like, you know, taking the Confederate flag down, and the black woman climbed up the pole, and the white friend didn't just stand on the outside to let him know the cops were coming, but literally when the cops threatened to mace the flagpole,
they were tasing it. They were
tasing, not mace.
Right, to electrocute her. Yes.
He didn't just stand on the outside. He went to the flagpole and put his hand on the flagpole, knowing that they wouldn't tase it with a white man holding, and that is co-conspiratorship.
Put his hand on it and flat out stared him down. And that's exactly what I would have done. Or I would have been hugging that MFer, you know, but yes.
Yeah.
And, you know, I was talking in that group too the other day. I said, you know, these memes that are going around asking if you've ever wondered what you would do back in the days of the Nazi regime, right? And the concentration camps, and any of those other big moments in history, Japanese internment camps, anything, you are doing it now. And I remember as a kid reading books about these events. You're gonna think I'm weird. I read Mein Kampf when I was like 10 or 11 years old.
I actually don't think that's weird. It's so you.
Right? My mom was like, where did you get that? And I said, from my grandpa's house. It was her dad's.
I was reading like Black Stallion.
Right?
Black Beauty or whatever.
Oh, I read that too.
Yeah.
But, and she just shook her head. So that was the wonderful thing about my parents, is they weren't that plugged into my life. So I could read a bunch of stuff and, you know, not have it censored, right?
Yeah, that's awesome.
But I remember thinking to myself even then, boy, if I lived then, I would be one of the German groups that, you know, hid Anne Frank. I read the Diary of Anne Frank too, and I felt like she was my best friend. You know, and I cried when what happened with the family. But yes, these moments are asking a lot of us. And for some of us, we are going to, for me, this entire environment that we're in with all of this really has even done a 180 on my business and how I was showing up. You know, we're both in spiritual circles and we're both about, you know, taking a higher spiritual perspective on stuff and energy awareness. And, you know, we talk about manifestation and all of that. But with these events, it just, they're too raw, they're too real, they're too much of our human experience that we, for me, I couldn't avoid. Yeah.
I couldn't, I'm the joy magnet, and I
Right.
know, you know, it's when I'm known as a speaker, and everyone's like, you know, me and my joyful videos and my positive, and
Yeah.
I woke up recently and was like, I can't express that right now.
Yeah.
Until I know that things are better. And it doesn't mean that, you know, I can't see the positive and I don't know the bigger picture of all that, but I also know, and you taught me this, is that we are here in this experience, though. We've been given both, though, because I couldn't reconcile in my brain, like I knew on the spiritual level that, you know, what is real, what's not, the veil, I understand all of that.
Yeah.
But it was like reconciling how you live in both, you know, and I used to just only see the positive and the joy, and that had me denying a lot of things. And
Right.
and actually, you know, James, dear James, he said to me once when we were talking, he called this, he said, you are the custodian of your experiences. And it was like, I wrapped my heart around that too, because I feel like we've all been given these experiences. And if we turn our back to them, then we're not actually living in them. We're living in
Amen.
different, in the spiritual world, which is like, then why be in the human one?
Right.
Like, why are we here?
Yes.
You know?
Yes. And to explain that to those of you who are listening who maybe aren't in these circles, you know, we are all spiritual beings having a human experience, and it's for that exact reason then that we are called into these contrasting moments of disruption and pain and loss and grief and all of that, against the backdrop of love and exuberance and joy and vitality and, you know, and happiness and all of that all of these wonderful emotions that we want to live in. But we can't live in those without living in the others as well, because they both inform each other and they both teach us.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and that's been the biggest thing for me too. And, you know, I'm all about doing the you know, taking a higher vision of things and higher view. You know, we've gone through some horrific human experiences ourselves, and we see the beauty and the blessing and the gift out of that. But that does not negate, right, the trauma and the pain and the suffering and the violation.
There is beauty and joy and blessings right now in this experience that you and I are sharing. Like, and that's what I'm learning, that blessings and joy and beauty don't have to be just in the woo, everything is great, but it's in this realness right now. It's in the being able to share this with you. It's in taking on something that is so, that feels like it's so dark and heavy, but it's in the holding it to the light, like it's bringing it both together, you know?
Yes.
I don't know.
We talked in our group too about the difference of freedom and liberation. And I feel like this is such an awakening moment for so many of us. And it's a time of real understanding of those differences. You know, 4th of July came and went, and I did not celebrate my country.
I haven't celebrated the last 3 years.
Yeah,
but this, to be honest, but this was a different reason. This was a deeper, not just a dislike for something.
Right.
This was a not being proud. I don't know. not seeing
Yeah,
what
I'm not
our
afraid of
ideals are. Yeah.
distinction. Right, 100%. And gosh, years ago, I was in college and going through my interpreter training program, and one of my girlfriends had said at the time she wanted to live somewhere else. She mentioned Russia, which was shocking to me, but you know, some other European countries too, and because she was really upset at the way that things were going here in this country, and me being raised as I was like, well, go, we don't need you if you don't love the United States. You know, I was raised to be a patriot.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that takes on a whole new flavor and whole new meaning for me now, and it has for quite some time, but particularly acutely within these last probably 3.5, 4 years,
Yeah.
right? 5 years.
Yeah.
And I thought about that this past holiday, and I was like, you know, I can't celebrate my freedoms when my freedoms means that my brothers and sisters near me don't have freedoms,
Mm-hmm.
or they only have the scraps off of the table that we've given them.
Right. It's about it's about sacrifice, Raelin. It's
Mm-hmm.
I say this because what just came in my head was like this idea that I can't celebrate the 4th of July, or that I can't partake in going out to brunches because of, you know, COVID, and I can't do all this. I remember when things would come out about companies that I frequented, like Starbucks, and they'd be like, they believe in this or that. And I would have to be like, oh, I'm not going to go. I can't go to Starbucks, or I can't go, you know, and shop at Amazon. And it always reflected back to me in my own sacrifices, and my own, you know. And as you're talking about the 4th of July and not celebrating, like, I feel like that's what this is that, again, back to, we're not willing to look and to see, because then we have to sacrifice and give up.
Yeah.
And I know that's not where this conversation was going, but that's just what popped up when you're talking about the 4th of July. Because I'm like, yeah, I don't want to lose the fireworks either, and the pride, and I don't want to lose what I've always known.
Right. Right.
But
what we've always known has been a half truth.
Right. Right. And then what does it look like on the other side?
Yes.
Like, maybe the other side is so much better.
Yes.
You know?
And liberation is where we're wanting to head.
Right.
Liberation is the setting free, you know, is releasing the shackles, releasing the chains off of the gate, you know, opening the gates, and everyone is equitable, you know, as they actually are within their human divinity and dignity, you know, inherently. Yes.
And doesn't it feel like, it feels like with this conversation comes like the exhale, because I feel like we're all walking around collectively with our breaths held, not saying certain things, not acting a certain way, afraid of this, or they're going to have that. And like, it's like putting it all on the table, saying, here it is.
Yes.
Now let's work through this.
Yeah.
It feels like what you said about freedom, that part, like you feel like talking about racism and all that feels like a freedom. That's what this feels like, that I wish people could hear, that it's just like taking all the skeletons out of the closet, and as scary as that is, you're just like, but look at the light. Look at the shadows in the closet, the monsters, and then you put it to the light and you're like, okay, there's
nothing there, and then the closet is free and clear, and now you can clean it, and there's liberation with that.
Yes.
Yes.
And I know I'm making it sound easier than it is, because we've all, again, back to our own inner stuff and our inner work and that. So sometimes it feels like we keep coming up against the same thing, but I think that's the work you and I are doing right now, and taking our businesses. And I see now more than ever, like when this came about, I thought, oh, your self-love work, Shari, like that seems so minimal or minuscule in this bigger picture, but I'm also realizing how friggin' important it is, like, in this conversation.
100%. And I think, I mean, it can, and it still does marry with self-love. You know, we can't have self-love if the parts of us that exist aren't all integrated.
Right.
And that's even the shadow aspects and the skeletons in the closet.
Right.
And if there's still something else hanging out there, we've got to integrate that in.
Yeah.
You know, and that's what self-love is. And you know,
acknowledgement, acceptance,
yeah,
all of it. It's all part of it. And
I know I was thinking, I can't really continue to promote my chakra class if, you know, right? If I'm not willing to, you know, or even my inner child work class, if I'm not willing to speak on this and really integrate this into who I am and how I show up too, because it is a part of me, but if I'm unwilling to speak it out and share it out, then I'm denying it, then I'm hiding.
Right. And it doesn't feel authentic. And it's like everything that I've ever learned and journeyed through, none of it means anything if I can't, in the hardest of moments and the most challenging, be able to take that on while still taking care of myself, while still all of it, you know?
Yes, 100%. So. Well, do you want to tell everybody about how they can connect with you and your book and all of that?
Sure. Thank you for asking. We can grab my book. It's available on Amazon and Barnes & Noble, called Love Yourself Happy, A Journey Back to You. Would love for you to check it out because it would help you in the reconnection back to yourself. And then things don't feel so fearful. And then you can go to my website, ShariAlyse.com, ShariAlysc.com. I was like, she disappeared on me.
I know. I knew I had it here. I had
thanks. I didn't even drink. Yeah, I only brought the other book. Quite reading. Thank you. Yeah, and then ShariAlyse.com. Depending on when you see this, it might be under construction, but you know, it's the best way to connect with me. And then, you know, Facebook, Instagram, all that good stuff. Yeah,
awesome. And you guys all have her links and connectivity in the what do you call it? The description of the podcast, and also on YouTube too, so you can connect with Shari as well as with me. And then my shameless book plug is Self-Healing, The Ultimate Guide to Self-Healing Techniques. This is volume 1. I wrote a chapter on body awareness through somatic experiencing because of the trauma that I experienced is similar trauma that Shari has as well. And so it's a wonderful book, and it's perfect for you at home right now to go through lots of wonderful techniques that you can do at home to help you in your inner work, right, in your healing journey. And you can get that through my website as well. It's under construction, but I'll put the URL for you to grab a signed copy from me directly too. You guys, we're gonna have more of these conversations with Shari and I, and with other individuals as well. My goal, Shari, want to have like a big, like a podcast summit or you know, something like that. So love to invite some other voices along with us too.
Me too. That would be amazing. That would be amazing. Yeah, absolutely. We need all voices.
We do.
In this conversation.
100%. And you guys can join, I don't know if you mentioned it already, you can join our Facebook group, White Fragility Discussion Group. I'll have that link too in there, but if you just go on Facebook and search it, it's White Fragility Discussion Group, and the picture of it is the picture of the book.
Yeah, make sure you see Raelin and I's admins, because there's actually a lot of book clubs and things with this that use that as, so we'll put the link for it. Yeah,
we'll put the link for it in there.
Yeah, we would love to have you in there. We're all just learning together too, and unlearning, and it's an open and safe space, and I'm really grateful for it right now.
Me too. We have some really powerful conversations. We are currently working through chapter 4, so there's still time to join. And if you can't get the physical copy, you can always get the Kindle version, and the Kindle app is free to use on any device. So.
And if it triggers you, then you should definitely get the book.
Right? Lean in.
Lean in. Yeah, for sure.
keep reading. You guys, thank you so much for listening. Shari, thank you for joining me, my friend. I love you so much.
Love you too.
Yeah.
Thank you for being in this discussion with me and this ongoing discussion.
It's important, and it's an honor, and I'm honored that you invited me into this space. So thank you, friend.
Thank you.
All right, love you. See you
Love
later.
you.